You find yourselves entering the caves of despair. Up ahead, through the stalactites, you see a strange, monkey-like creature with a mouth not only on its face, but on its tail. And it gnashes its saliva-drenched teeth at you. What do you do, Tony?
My name's not Tony.
Oh, yeah, you're not Tony at all. I'm sorry, Rob, is this someone you brought?
Yeah, you call me Rob, but that ain't me.
Yeah, you're not Rob, you're not Tony. Who the hell are you people?
Language? I'm only 12.
Who invited the 12-year-old to my table?
You're not at your table.
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 You're not
at your table.
You're not at your table.
You're not at your table.
You're not at your table.
You're not at your
You're not at your table.
You're not at your table.
Do you want to be a better dungeon master? Me too. Hi, William Tramp, also known as This Effin' GM here, and today I want to talk to you about convention game mastering. Maybe you are considering making the jump from being a home game master to running games for the masses at a convention. I can tell you from personal experience, convention game mastering is a wonderful way to polish your skills, find new sources of inspiration for running games at your home table, and a great way to make connections in the larger tabletop role-playing game space. But wow, is it different. Okay, a little bit of background about myself. I have been the forever game master of my table for over 20 years.
20 years.
I've run games for friends and family for decades, and I like to think that I've gotten pretty damn good at running these games. But after a bit, I started to wonder, am I good at running tabletop role-playing games, or am I just good at running games for these specific people? So I decided to answer this question at Gen Con 2022 by running games for Grim and Perilous Studios using the Zweihander system. And it was a really good time. I ran games for dozens of people that I had never previously met, and it was, by and large, a success from my perspective. It was an incredibly rewarding experience. Now, for your edification, I ran The Kids Aren't All Right by Chuck Krams, which you can find a link to in the thing below. Now, a few years later, I was invited to the D8 Summit Charity Convention, where I got my next chance to run for strangers in a convention. And boy, was I a wreck walking in. You see, this time it was a bit different because rather than running somebody else's pre-made adventure, I was going to run my own adventure. All kinds of fears entered my mind as I walked into that ballroom. Will people like the games I wrote? Will I sell any tickets? Will the players be entertained? Will I be invited back? Will this be worth the convention's time and my time? Ugh. Now, I ran, and to think that I saw it on Ironmonger Street, which you can find a link to in the thing below. And the whole thing ended up being a success from my perspective. Now, before I knew that it would be successful, I sought out some advice from some convention game mastering experts, or at least I like to think they are. And I was very lucky to be introduced to Joe Alfano and John MOSEY. Joe Alfano, who's also known as Zombie Joe in the tabletop role-playing game convention circle, is the head of Madison D&D, the Dungeons & Dragons Adventures League network in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, Joe has been gaming himself for over 45 years, much of it as a forever DM, and has over a decade of experience managing game masters in a convention format. He also works as the production manager for the Border Kingdoms series of Adventures League Adventures. Now, John MOSEY is a freelance adventure author, longtime convention game master in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, and a handsome son of a bitch. A wink. These two gentlemen were instrumental in my understanding of more effective convention game mastering. Throughout the convention, and then later through various phone calls that we had, I got the opportunity to sit down and talk with these two men in an attempt to create this video. A quick and dirty guide to more effective convention game mastering, made in the hopes that you too will feel emboldened to take the jump into the wonderful world of strangers and ballrooms. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. When considering signing up to Game Master for a convention, there are a number of factors for you to think about. I mean, is the juice worth the squeeze? Sure, most companies looking for game masters will offer sweet incentives, such as hotel rooms, free convention tickets, and swag, just to run games for them. But getting free stuff should not be the have-all, end-all of the conversation. First, I strongly urge you to look over the game company's code of conduct. This is definitely different from your home game and often mirrors the convention's code of conduct. Now, usually, the codes of conduct will include some variation of Wheaton's rule. Don't be a dick is the gist of the code of conduct. Now, codes of conduct will also include ways for dealing with players, like how to respond to a problem. Players in these games, by the way, will have to agree to this code as well. Now, while it's rare, people can be removed, and they are removed fast. This is similar to improvisational comedy shows in retail. Every moment a problem remains is a moment for other people to consider never coming back. It behooves everyone to be familiar with the codes of conduct and how they exist to protect the company, the players, and yourself. An example of a code of conduct can be found in the thing below. All right. When signing up for games, another major consideration is to consider how many slots you want to run. This will not only determine the amount of time that you're expected to be on the clock, it will also determine how much time that you have for other activities that you might want to do at the convention. You have to know your limits. When signing up for slots, remember that this is not a contest and it's not an endurance test. Now, often there are benefits to doing a certain number of hours, like, as I mentioned before, free convention badges and swag to take home. Usually the more slots you run, the more swag you get, and the more people who will get to know your name. Some companies even offer free hotel rooms, but this is usually attached with a requirement of like 24 to 30 hours of game mastering in a weekend for them. But as attractive as this is, if you can't do that many slots, don't. Game master burnout is real. 12 to 15 hour days can really suck, especially if you're expected to run multiple different games or modules. Now, on that note, if you're running a bunch of slots, try and run the same game or module as many times as possible. Some companies want the same module run all weekend, some want the game master to switch around, and that can drastically increase your prep time. Next, ask the company, how quickly am I going to get this module? In some cases, you could get the module about a week or a month in advance, but sometimes you get it the day of. Being a fast reader is an important skill to have in game mastering at a convention. Now, if you can, prior to receiving the module, brush up on the core rules of the system that you will be running for. Now, remember that refreshing yourself on the rules is a great practice, even on a game that you are used to running, because sometimes we forget that we use house rules and that might not fly at the convention. Now, once you receive the module, read and study it in advance. If you're lucky enough to have a gaming group to use, test run the module with them prior to see if you can catch any potential trouble spots in the adventure. Now, for convention support, remember that Discord servers are your friend. Rarely are you the only person running a given module or system, and you almost always can find a Discord server for the company that you're working with and ask the author or other game masters questions in advance of game time. Now, considering when looking over the module, marking areas that can be shortened or lengthened. In a convention game, the goal is to complete the scenario in the allotted amount of time. Knowing what sections can be embellished to add time, or areas that can be sped through to make up for lost time, is a great practice for a game master to have, so that that way everyone's time can be spent wisely. On that note, plan for breaks, usually one break in any game lasting 3 or more hours. Lastly, know that the company is often there to support you in running these games. Some of them will allow game masters to do a dry run of more complex games the night before so that everyone knows a little bit better, and that is absolutely something to take advantage of to get last-minute questions or problems out of the way. Likely, you're going to be away from home for a few days, so a fresh pair of tidy-whities and your medication obviously needs to be tossed into your bag. But what else should you be bringing to the convention? Some companies sponsoring games will have common supplies on hand, like maps and pens and the like, but those are often in short supply and primarily for people who have forgotten to bring their own. Make sure that you speak with the organizers of the Game Masters to know what should and should not be expected to be available. Now, if you're going solo or the company is unable to provide materials that you will need, bring along maps and minis and other tools that you find to be most comfortable for your game mastering experience. Now, that aside, make sure your equipment level, whether provided by the company or yourself, fits your comfort level. If you don't normally use printouts or minis and the like, don't start now. If you normally do theater of the mind, do it at the convention. Remember that while flashy terrain and maps are really eye-popping, most players play for a good time, not widgets. In addition to equipment needed to run the game, also make sure you pack cough drops, Tylenol, tea for the morning, and assuming you're one to imbibe, whiskey at night, because whiskey helps the vocal cords recover. Bring food, good food that you can eat and process. This is not to say companies and conventions can't accommodate food. Many can, but if you have dietary restrictions, it's best to make certain yourself that you have what you need. X cards. This is a standard for many organized play games, but is overall a great consideration for running any, in-person games with strangers. If you do not use an X card at your table, you should probably practice with it for a session or two prior to the convention. You should bring networking tools. You have to know that if you are trying to get into module publishing, game development, or doing other events, you need some way to grant people the ability to speak with you after the convention. Personally, I recommend business cards. But bookmarks are also a great method because often business cards go in the trash, but bookmarks go in a book. You can also bring swag too if you're working with a group. Consider, if you have not already, developing a persona, such as this effing GM for me, or Zombie Joe goes by Zombie Joe. This makes you more memorable. All right, so you're at the convention. Awesome. Wait, how should you conduct yourself to maximize your game mastering ability? First, let's talk about the 6-2-1 rule. 6 hours of sleep at night, 2 meals a day, 1 shower a day. I know that this may sound ridiculous to some of you, but proper sleep, proper meals, and a shower can feel a little hard to come by when you're dealing with convention game mastering. You don't have as quick of access to your own home, so you're dealing with an unfamiliar schedule, and you need to make sure that you prioritize these items for your own health and the noses of others. A wink. Know that losing your voice is common, especially when overcommitting to game slots. Again, when signing up for slots, remember that this is not a contest and it's not an endurance test. This is why a cup of tea in the morning can be very helpful for loosening those cords, and having some cough drops on hand can help keep you going in the middle of the games. Now, if you're the gregarious sort, you should get a convention buddy, like another game master or a player, just someone else who you can connect with and check in on each other. Making sure you have something to eat and drink and making sure that you're taking care of yourself. This is especially important if you're driving long distances to get to the convention. Now, in terms of sitting down, try to sit with your face to a wall. Sure, this makes it a little easier for assassins to sneak up behind you, but this also allows your voice to bounce off the wall and back to your players. Simple, audible physics can really help save your voice. On that note, be careful with using a game master screen. They can block your voice, and you may have to strain that much harder to get your point to the players across from you. Remember to speak, sip, speak. If the players are role-playing, grab water and sip some. Stay hydrated, friends, and keep those vocal cords moist. Vocal cords? Yeah. As for play, always be willing to improvise, even more so now that you're likely gaming with strangers. Strangers have this funny habit of coming up with ideas and ways of play that your players may never have considered before. After all, every table is different, and when you game master for a convention, you are not the only one bringing your table habits with you. Players will always throw things at you and make you go off script. This can be frustrating if you aren't prepared for it, and it's just more likely that this is going to happen when you're gaming with strangers. But keep in mind that while you are running the table, this isn't your home and this isn't just your table. You need to be willing to be accommodating and flexible. Convention game mastering is not just about running cool games for cool people or getting a chance to hone your skills. It can also be an amazing way to network and meet new people to work with or game with in the future. How do you build those connections? Well, as mentioned before, networking tools like business cards or flyers or bookmarks with your contact information on it can be invaluable in the situation. So your new potential best friend has a physical reminder as to how to contact you. But next, remember that other people's names are important. Many people at a convention wear badges. Read their names, and if pronouns are used on the name tag, use their pronouns. Committing to using names and pronouns will go a long way in making others want to interact with you more. On that note, make sure that when you interact with others, you treat them like humans who have value. This is especially true with celebrities. They're just normal people. If a celebrity is at your table, they're not there to promote themselves or be fawned over. They're there to have fun. Also remember that imposter syndrome is a real thing. You may find yourself running games and start to feel like maybe you shouldn't be there. You know what? You should be there. You are there, and the players at your table don't need the world's greatest game master. They just need someone knowledgeable of the game and excited to provide them a positive experience with that game. Lastly, when networking, you'll really need to make a choice as to whether or not to do the bar con. Lots of networking is done at bars, which is colloquially referred to as the bar con. But if you are the type of person who cannot handle the temptation or you get stupid with liquor, you have to hold back. Sitting and talking to people and getting to know their interests and work and sharing a love of games is far more important than proving that you are the life of the party. And though it may feel like it on occasion, the bar after the convention is not a frat party. And remember that you're still trying to put your best foot forward. And that's about it in terms of the advice that I'm able to provide, with a lot of help from my friends, Joe Alfano and John Mosey. I sure hope that you were able to find some useful advice in this video, and even more importantly, I hope that if you are on the fence as to whether or not to attempt game mastering at a convention, that you feel a little more empowered to do so now. If you found any of this advice useful, or if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments, or reach out to me or any of the others through our social medias, which are also listed in the thing below. Otherwise, I want to thank you for watching this video. I want to double thank you if you liked and subscribed, and I look forward to seeing you next time.